welcome back to Food Prep Guide. We're back in the kitchen today with a very delicious recipe for you. We had a very unexpected freezing night last night. It has been beautiful weather here in the 60s to 65s, but it dipped down to the 20s last night. It is very chilly today. I'm wearing my heavy sweater and it's just got me in the baking mood. So I thought I would make up a pot of cinnamon rolls for my family today, and I thought I would bring you along because I consider this a food storage or a pantry meal recipe because most cinnamon roll recipes call for either buttermilk or heavy whipping cream, and that's something that we don't buy either one of those two things. So first I'm going to show you a trick for turning regular milk into a quick buttermilk. It's going to be delicious. And then another thing that is just regular with cinnamon rolls is powdered sugar. That is something else that we don't buy, but we can turn regular sugar into powdered sugar, and we will talk about that as well. So before we actually get into making the cinnamon rolls, there are a few things we need to do to prep first. So first we're going to preheat our oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which I have already done. And then we're going to get our cast iron skillet, and we're going to put 2 tablespoons of butter in the skillet. And then we're going to place that in the oven and let that butter be melting and getting really hot while we prep the rest of the dough and such. And it's just going to create a buttery bottom on the bottom of those cinnamon rolls, and it's really good. So 2 tablespoons of butter in a 450 degree oven. And we're just going to let that preheat. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and get some butter melting. So right off camera, actually you can see it a little bit. We need to get 5 tablespoons of butter melted for being ready to create our actual rolls. So I've got 5 tablespoons of butter melting. The next step we need to prepare is to make our buttermilk, and that is just milk and regular white distilled vinegar. I have used this trick countless times. It works. It sounds strange, and it kind of looks a little strange because it slightly curdles your milk, which is kind of gross, but buttermilk, that's what we're going for, right? That slightly tangy taste. So for this recipe, we need, I got my recipe card here, I don't want to tell you wrong, 1 cup of milk. So this is a pint jar, which is 2 cups, so I'm just going to fill it to halfway to get 1 cup of milk. If I don't have to dirty up a bunch of measuring cups, then I don't. That's one reason I love working with pint jars and quart jars. I know that they are 2 cups and 4 cups. So 1 cup of milk, and then we're just going to do a splash of vinegar. If you want a measurement, you can do 1 tablespoon of vinegar, but I just pour in a little splash. And then all we're going to do is mix it around. And we need to let this sit on the counter for about 10 minutes, which is why we want to go ahead and prep this first before we start doing all of our other stuff. So I'm just mixing it around just gently, and then I'm just going to set it on the counter, and I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and we will move on to the next step. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next step anyway, because that will take about 10 minutes to make all the dough and stuff like that anyway. But in about 10 minutes, that milk is going to turn into a tangy flavor that is very, very similar to buttermilk. This works for buttermilk biscuits really well too. Welcome to Food Prep Guide. My name is Jordan. I'm a homeschooling mom to 3, living on 3 beautiful acres with my wonderful husband. A health crisis forced our family to change the way we think about food. Unfortunately, it also put us in financial hardship. Thankfully, the solution to both challenges was the same: to live off the land as much as possible. For us, that means growing a garden, preserving the harvest, raising chickens, and cooking from scratch. It's definitely a family affair. And friends, too. Meet Stacy, researcher, author, and lifelong learner. She entered the world of food preservation in the crazy days of 2020. She joined a gleaning co-op, and a local grocer offered her clearance produce in bulk. And so the adventure began. Together, we're reclaiming the old ways of food stewardship and teaching them to the next generation. If there's one thing you should know about us, it's that we love Jesus and seek to steward his blessings wisely. Our table always has room for one more, so y'all come join us. Okay, I have waited about 5 minutes before I started on this process to give that milk time to kind of turn into buttermilk for us. So this first step to make the dough is to put in your flour. Now, I don't sift my flour for pretty much anything except for cinnamon rolls and sometimes my buttermilk biscuits, because we really do want that super fluffy texture that is just so wonderful in cinnamon rolls. So I just have my strainer bowl here, and I am going to sift my flour. We need 2 cups of flour. I'm going to do them 1 cup at a time and sift it. Got lots of clumps in here. That's because I vacuum sealed my 5-pound bags of flour. That does cause some clumping. That's another reason why I really want to sift first. So our 2nd cup of flour. Okay, look at that beautiful smooth flour. So to this we're going to add 3 teaspoons of baking powder. And this is how you turn all-purpose flour into self-rising flour, which is adding baking powder and salt. So I'm adding 3 teaspoons of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. Whoops. Let me get my teaspoon here. Half a teaspoon of salt. If you have self-rising flour, you could just not add the baking powder or salt because the self-rising flour already has it in there for you. And I need my whisk. Okay, so I want to give that milk mixture just a few more minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and let's make our sugar cinnamon mixture. So we just need a regular size bowl for that. We need half a cup of brown sugar. We also make our own brown sugar. We have a whole video on that, on how to make your sugars, and I'll be sure to link that in the description box if you're interested. But to half a cup of brown sugar, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Pumpkin pie spice is also really good instead of cinnamon. We like to do that in the fall when all the pumpkin things are in season. You can use this same base cinnamon roll recipe, by the way, to make jelly rolls. It's just instead of your cinnamon sugar mixture, you would just add whatever type of fruit jelly that you're wanting. It's a great way to use up those jellies that you're maybe canned from the garden last year or from the farmer's market. It's a great way to get some more uses out of all those jellies you made. Okay, the milk is probably about ready. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. Okay, I don't know if the camera's going to be able to pick this up because I can't tilt this too far without spilling it. Let me see. It's about as high, it's about as much as I can tilt it. But what we're looking for is for the top layer of the milk to start looking a little bit thick and slightly curdled. You're not looking for anything chunky by any means. That would just be gross. But it does thicken up pretty significantly compared to just regular milk. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but that's what we're looking for. So this is good and done. I'm going to give it a good stir real quick and then add it to our flour mixture here. Then it's just a matter of stirring this up into a nice dough till a dough forms. And it will be a very shaggy dough. It's not going to be smooth at all. It'll be very sticky too. Okay, here's what the finished product looks like. Very sticky, very shaggy. Now at this point we need to roll the dough out. Because of how sticky this dough is, I'm going to flour the surface, and I'm also going to wet my fingers. I find that slightly wet fingers really helps with the stickiness when I'm working with sticky dough. I'm going to flour it pretty heavily. Also got a bowl of just plain water here to dip my fingers in to help me as I go throughout the rolling out process. Okay, I'm going to flour the top just a little bit so my rolling pin doesn't stick too terribly bad. I don't want to go overboard with the flour because, I don't want to go overboard with the water on my fingers because we don't want the dough to be too moist. That will affect how the rolls turn out, but just dipping it every now and then I find is not too big of a deal. I'm actually going to go ahead and flour my rolling pin here. And then we're just rolling out kind of into the shape of like a 9x13 pan. Nice rectangle is what we're going for. So I'm going to get it into a nice rectangle shape before I start rolling it out actually. Okay, I've got more of a rectangle shape now. Get this out of my way. Okay, you know what? I need to knead this just a little bit. You don't need to knead cinnamon roll dough, but in this case, it is just coming apart really too easily. So I'm just going to knead this really quick, just a few times, to hopefully get it to really stick together good. And I'm just going to continue adding a little bit of flour as needed until the dough is easier to work with. Okay. I'll wash my hands real quick, get a fresh slate. Okay, let's try again. Much better. So like I said, we're going for kind of a 9x13 type size, maybe a little bit smaller. Stay. Need to flour my pin. Goodness gracious. This dough is so sticky. I mean, I've just about got it to 9x13 anyway. Just about got it. I think I'm going to call that good. Okay, I'm going to wipe off as much of the excess flour as I can, but not a big deal at all. Okay, we're going to brush with our melted butter, which is done now. And I'm going to pour that on and then kind of rub it in with this brush. It's like a silicone type brush. And we're just going to pour that evenly as possible over our dough square here, or rectangle. And then we're just going to paint it on like a paintbrush. All the way to the edges. Okay, now we are adding our brown sugar mixture. Brown sugar and cinnamon mixture. We're just going to cover the entire rectangle. And I'm going to try to just kind of sprinkle that evenly as possible. Just trying to fill in some gaps a little bit here and there. Okay. Now we're going to start rolling it up. I'm going to go this way. We don't just roll it up just like a jelly roll. And I'm just tucking in the edges as I go. We want to keep the roll as tight as possible, so I'm kind of lifting up and tucking as I go. Lifting up and tucking, lifting up and tucking. That just kind of helps keep it nice and tight. Okay. Now we are ready to slice them into our rolls. Depending on how wide you make your original rectangle, it's going to kind of figure out how many cinnamon rolls you get, and of course how wide you slice them. So if you just want, we like nice and thick cinnamon rolls, so I do slice them pretty thick, but I'll show you. Let me get a good knife here. Okay. We do them about like this. So that's about the size that we do our cinnamon rolls. So I'm just going to make those cuts. It averages between 7 and 8. It's slightly different each time just because of how much I roll the dough out, how wide I make the rectangle, or how skinny I roll it out, that kind of thing. So, but in general, you can expect 7 to 8 cinnamon rolls from this recipe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's go ahead and just divide this last little log into 2. Okay, at this point, we need to get that really hot skillet that has all that melted butter in it out of the oven. It's going to be super duper hot, so I'm going to get some oven gloves and a little cloth to put down on the counter while we load in the rolls. Okay, here's that skillet with all of that butter that is now very browned. Nice and browned butter. I'm just going to slosh that around real quick. And then we're going to very carefully place cinnamon rolls cut side up. And squish them just a tad. Got a little fuzzy in that one. Okay, and into the oven they go at 450 degrees for 15 minutes. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left on our cinnamon rolls, so it's time to get our topping going, our icing. So for this, we need 1 cup of powdered sugar. I mentioned that we don't buy powdered sugar, but you can easily make your own with just regular sugar and some arrowroot powder or cornstarch. And then all you need is a blender and blend it up until it turns into this powder. We have an entire video dedicated to how to turn regular cane sugar into 3 different types of sugars, including powdered sugar, and I will link that in the description box below. So we need 1 cup of powdered sugar, and this is actually the powdered sugar that we made together in that video. And I need 1 cup. Sugar flying everywhere. Okay, next we need 4 teaspoons of vanilla extract. One, 2, 3, and 4. And then we just need a splash of milk, just about 2 tablespoons or so, but you really need to just eyeball it to the consistency that you want your icing. Some people like really thick icing, so you would use less milk. If you want your icing nice and thin, go ahead and use some more milk. I've also noticed that sometimes, like when I go to make the judgment call on whether I want to add more milk or not, I need to whisk it for longer than I think I do, because it gets a little bit thicker as you whisk it. Okay, here's the consistency that we're at right now. Actually, you can't really see that. Let me just spin real quick. A little bit too liquidy, but I mean, this would be totally fine, but I like our icing to be a little thicker than that, so I'm actually going to sprinkle in just a little bit more powdered sugar. And you just keep going back and forth between the powdered sugar and the milk until you get the consistency that you like. It's not bright white icing like at the grocery store, because the vanilla extract turns it brown. So that's a little bit thicker, not too much thicker, but I'm happy with that. So this is going to be our icing, and the oven is just about to go off. We will spread it on in just a second. Okay, here are our cinnamon rolls. So I'm just going to set that there, and we're just going to pour our icing on top. Sometimes I do it extra thick, and I have to actually use a brush to wipe them on top. Okay, we are going to let this sit just like this for about 10 minutes and let them cool, and I'll show you the finished product. Okay, here we are, all done. They've been cooling for about 10 minutes. I made my icing a little thinner than usual. It usually has a little bit thicker of an icing on top, but all the flavors are still there. Really delicious, and we didn't need any fancy ingredients. If you're interested, we'll pop up that video on the screen somewhere right around here of how to make your own powdered sugar. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.